This video has been funded in part by the Guild via Patreon. Check out the links in the description or at the end of this video for more details. Hello everybody, my name is Chris Gildart, and welcome back to another Pros vs. Cons review, the show where I present my complete list of pros and cons. Rose and Camellia Collection for some reason flew completely under my radar. You know, I get emails from Wayforward, and I still missed this one. But I really appreciate Wayforward for reaching out and providing a review code for the game on Switch. I actually got this back when I was in the Atlantic Entertainment Expo in Fredericton, you know, in April. But because Muso-me was so close, I had to work on those videos first. Then life kinda hit me a little hard, and I had to take a break from YouTube for a while, so suffice to say, I appreciate Wayforward's patience in me getting this video out. When I say I had no clue what Rose and Camellia was, I really mean it. Looking up some information, it turns out it was developed by Nigoro, a Japanese indie dev that's been around for a while now. They primarily develop Flash games, but Wayforward has brought the Rose and Camellia collection to Nintendo Switch on April 16th, 2024. When I got the email with the review code offer, I almost declined it. But after watching the trailer, this game looked like so much fun. Wayforward and Limited Run Games are even putting out physical copies of the game, including a collector's edition. So if you like what you see in this video, there are a couple different ways to jump into this game. During the time I was working on this year's Muso-me videos and dealing with some things in life, I was able to finish all of the stories in this game, so I decided to write a full review instead of my usual mini review. This may be a bit shorter than my usual full reviews, but as always, I plan to give it as much energy as I normally would. While I was in Fredericton, I saw a comment saying that this game was like Punch-Out with the story of a Spanish telenovela, and that got me excited to play this game. But maybe I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. Don't forget to give this video a like, comment with your thoughts below, and of course subscribe if you haven't already. Alright, let's check out Rose and Camellia Collection with the first pro. Starting things off with the first thing you're going to be greeted with, which is an anime-level opening video complete with melancholy J-pop. The art style just screams 90s shoujo. I keep getting the vibes of things like Fushigi Yugi and Escaflowne. On initial look, the animations may seem lacking in some aspects, but you quickly get used to the way things look and move. The game was originally created in Flash for browsers, so what we get here is surprisingly fluid and expressive. I know there are lots of talented Flash animators out there. I mean, I'm a 90s kid, I practically grew up on Newgrounds. It's not what you think! So many of the animations look super good. I love the character Righty with how much she celebrates her victory, but all characters are extremely expressive. You can almost guess how a character will act and what their values are just by looking at their design and animations. Even going through the beginning tutorial, the character Tori looks stern and steadfast. She's able to take your slaps, and you can tell that before you even throw your first hand. Major props to Nigoro for these visuals. Now, though it does have some good moments, one of the biggest pulls for me to cover this game was that comment that said that the story was on the same level as a telenovela. Now, I'll admit that I have never actually watched a telenovela, but I know they really play up the drama to the extreme. This game has its drama, but it doesn't really linger long enough on these moments to give it the weight it needs to really immerse me. Rose and Camellia Collection has a total of 4 stories with a bonus crossover story that you can unlock from the settings. The first story, titled The Rose Bride of Legend, follows Reiko, the recent widow of Shunsuke, an heir to the Tsubaki Koji family. They're a very wealthy family with a large house. Reiko, however, is a commoner and has been bullied by her in-laws. Due to this, she decides she's going to inherit the family house. In order to do this, she must face all the women in the Tsubaki Koji family until she defeats them all and stands on top. The second chapter, titled The White Camellia of Revenge, follows Saori, one of the sisters of Shunsuke that you face in the first fight in the previous chapter, as she seeks revenge for the defeat at the hands of Reiko. The third chapter, titled The Chapter of World Youth, follows Righty, twin sister of Lefty. The two of them are training to become maids for the Tsubaki Koji family. Lefty is set to travel the world and slap her way to becoming the top maid, but Lefty is a very timid girl, nothing compared to the more rambunctious Righty. So Righty decides to step in and volunteers as tribute to take Lefty's place. The fourth and final chapter of the game is called The Everyday Life of a Tranquil Camellia. In the final chapter, you play as Shizuka, the eldest daughter of the Tsubaki Koji family. Shizuka has accepted her place as the eldest daughter under the shoes of Reiko. So this chapter is about the Tsubaki Koji family having a secret and the house being infiltrated by spies from another family. The bonus chapter has nothing to do with the other four. It doesn't even connect to the Tsubaki Koji family at all. In fact, it's a crossover story about La Mulana, a game also developed by Nigoro that I have never played, but has definitely been on my radar as a fan of Metroidvanias. I'll get around to them eventually! It follows the story of Mulbrook, slapping her way through all the female characters to prove she is the true heroine of the game. I will say that I did enjoy this story as a fourth wall breaking comedic romp, but it seems quite inconsequential to the overall La Mulana story. The whole story tends to jump too quickly to the next fight. These conversations between matches feel very much like a visual novel, but I feel like they didn't give it enough time to let the comedy or drama sink in as much as it could. If they gave us a bit more, I'm fairly certain the story would be one you'd want to experience time and time again, but as it is now from a story perspective, it might only be once or twice. I mean, that is unless they give us some Bright Noah DLC. Pro. Now, though the story leaves some room for improvement, the main draw for this game, for me anyways, is the gameplay. I couldn't find a way to play the original browser game, but the controls on Switch feels perfect. Again, I didn't know much about this game until Wayforward reached out, so I was a bit disappointed that there was no PS5 or PC port. But I couldn't see this game working this well on any other console other than maybe VR. Rose and Camellia uses motion control, which actually works to the game's benefit. I don't know if it was Nigoro or Wayforward who did this, but it works so perfectly. This game is very much like Punch-Out, where it's one-on-one fighting, but instead of something like Tekken where you are freely fighting, Punch-Out's gameplay is all about studying your opponent's moves. Rose and Camellia takes that gameplay style and adds a turn-based element to it. The player takes the role of the Rose, while your opponent is the Camellia. Each player takes a turn slapping the other. While it's your opponent's turn, you have to watch how they telegraph their attack. Most opponents have 3 to 5 different attacks, and each have slightly different animations. Not only that, each character also has a fake-out move, where they reel back as if they're about to attack, but go back to their default position. Watch out as well, because they can also dodge your attacks, and if they do, they can counter it. How you overcome these opponents is with your own arsenal of moves. During your turn, you need to press and hold A to raise your hand, and while your hand is raised, you can tilt the Joy-Con slightly to the right to fake out, and swing to the left to slap. Now before I go any further, I will say that this is all based on my right-handedness. We're doing this the right way! You'll also want to get used to faking out when going up against the bosses of each chapter as they get harder and harder. Starting out, I found it pretty easy to just press A while I was mid-swing as soon as my turn started, and my opponent would rarely dodge it. But later in the chapters, that tactic wouldn't work. During your opponent's turn, you hold R and tilt to the right in order to dodge. Dodge at the right time, and you'll be able to counter by holding A and swinging the Joy-Con again. Counter attacks cannot be dodged, which is something to keep in mind when you're attacking as well. The game's overall controls and gameplay are easy to understand and can take some time to truly master. There are also touch controls for when you have the console in handheld. Instead of using motion controls, you actually swipe across your opponent's face. With this, it's easier to target weak points, which you could say is a carryover from Punch-Out. You can still hit them with the motion controls, but I will admit it's more difficult to aim that way. Some characters will be weak to a slap across their chin versus their cheek, so you can also use that to figure out the most optimal way to slap the consciousness out of them. But as someone who went the whole game with the motion controls, it's not necessary if you want to finish the game. There are Roses and Camellias in the bottom right and left of the screen respectively. This shows your own and your opponent's health. More often than not, your opponent will have more health than you, so it's important to master each character's quirks in order to come out on top. Which brings me to the next part of the gameplay, and that's how each character does play differently. Reiko is your normal attacker, nothing really to keep in mind, but a character like Righty learns how to do the palm heel attack, where you tilt the Joy-Con to the right slightly as if you're feigning an attack, but go directly into a swing to the left for an extra strong slap. From time to time as well, you'll get the opportunity to let out a flurry of slaps. I honestly couldn't find anything that told me how to properly trigger a slap rush, but it tends to happen when you are doing extra well. When this happens, hold R and A together while swinging the Joy-Con left and right. If you do this fast enough, you can usually take out up to 2, if not 3 flowers from their health bar. In handheld, you just tap the icon that says grab her and then swipe back and forth on the screen. Overall, the gameplay is probably the main reason I stuck with this game. Not only is the story kind of lackluster given the setting and situation they're tackling, but Rose and Camellia is an extremely short game. You may notice me reusing some gameplay clips throughout this review because I was able to experience pretty well everything this game had to offer in a little over 2 hours. I recorded everything I did with this game, so we're looking at 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 12 seconds of gameplay. Now, I struggled with some of the fights, so if the controls and telegraphed attacks clicks with someone a little bit more than it did with me, I could see someone finishing this game in about an hour and a half. What's more wild is that only the first 2 chapters were released in the original Flash version. The La Mulana was a free chapter as well, so chapters 3 and 4 where you play as Righty and Shizuka are completely original to this game. The funny thing is, now that I know that, it makes a lot more sense. Chapters 1 and 2 seem quite connected, but Righty going around the world fighting other maids to become the top maid just seems inconsequential. Just like Shizuka protecting the Tsubaki Koji family secret from spies and assassins. Maybe if Reiko had a bit more involvement in Shizuka's chapter, it would have had some more weight to it and connection to the first 2 chapters. Maybe Reiko and Shizuka could have more of a conversation around how important it is to protect the Tsubaki Koji family house and secret. Then there's Righty's chapter where she's flying around the world to fight against other maids and become the top maid and serve the Tsubaki Koji family with her twin sister Lefty. The whole point of this is for the 2 to become maids for the family. No real connection to the main story. It may have been better if Shunsuke just passed away at the start of chapter 3 and Shizuka is commanding Righty and Lefty to become the top maids to help protect the family from Reiko, who is just starting to show signs that she may rebel against the family. At least these minor changes would help the stories keep some semblance of cohesiveness. As it is, the stories just don't leave much impact, and since we only get 4 chapters and 1 bonus, it leaves me wishing we had maybe 2 more chapters, or have chapters 3 and 4 be longer. Either way, the game just needs a bit more meat on its bones. One more thing I have to praise with this game is something that I always have to praise anytime I hear it. Thanks to Wayforward, we get a full English dub of the game. Not only do the characters have voices, but the narration and visual novel sections also have voices. This makes for a great experience for those of us who are extremely monolingual. I English can barely. We get the likes of Christina V, who voices a total of 6 characters and sings the opening J-pop song in frickin' Japanese. You may recognize Christina as the voice of Shantae, or for those that follow me for my Muso content, Lian Shi. Then we have Tiana Camacho, taking on 5 roles. You may recognize her as the white blood cell from Cells at Work Code Black, or the English voice of Bee in Pokemon. We also have Stephanie She, representing 5 characters as well. You may recognize Stephanie as Histoire in the Neptunia series, Tharja in Fire Emblem, Hinata in Naruto, and Guan Yinping in Dynasty Warriors. And then we got, and I'm going to butcher this name, Anjali Kunapaneni, who played 5 characters as well. I didn't really recognize any of the characters she's played before, but she has been a part of things like Berserk, Ruby, and Pokemon. Finally, we have Anna Brisbane, who took on the role of 6 characters. She may be most well known for both Dahlia and Belladonna in the Monster Prom series, or Kumiko in River City Girls, but she's also been in a Crash Zoom episode.
Wingy Windy!
This is a pretty star-studded cast, all things considered. Christina V is always good to see in the cast, and she gives the opening song her all. Speaking of songs, the soundtrack for this game really suits the mood of the Victorian setting. Melodies are played with a harpsichord, and it really slaps. But in all honesty, it really helps to bring everything together. I would have no problem putting this soundtrack into my instrumental playlist that I usually use in the background while I'm working on videos. You know, if this soundtrack was actually on Spotify. Con! Yes, I'll start this section off by saying the game's soundtrack is not on Spotify. The music hits just right, but unfortunately there's no way to add it to my playlist. This is a small thing that I hope Wayforward changes in the future, but I have my doubts that we'll see it considering the only Shantae soundtrack that's on Spotify is Seven Sirens. But the soundtrack being on Spotify is honestly the least of my problems. The biggest problem with Rose and Camellia Collection is that we don't really have much of a reason to play beyond the main story. There is a versus mode where you and a friend can take control of any character and have at each other. I'll give the game this, versus with a friend can be a lot of fun. Even with the person being physically in front of you, you don't know whether they're feigning an attack or going for a wind-up. So it can be even more challenging than going up against a computer opponent. But this mode has its own problems. The player assuming the role of the Rose can only pick characters that you play as through the story, so only Reiko, Saori, Raidi, Shizuka, and Mulbrook, while the player assuming the role of the Camellia can only pick opponents from the story. So while there are 31 characters to choose from, Reiko gets 2 slots, one as a Rose, one as a Camellia, Saori gets 2, Raidi gets 2 where her Camellia version has Lefty with her, Shizuka gets a total of 4 slots, 2 as the Rose and 2 as the Camellia, and Mulbrook gets 2 as a Rose, and Shinobu, an opponent during Shizuka's chapter, gets 2 as a Camellia. I understand that this is because some characters only appear as one or the other, but why are we held back by this for a versus mode? I would have rathered these characters be available to both players and each variant is just a costume. Sure, that makes the character roster sit at 23, but that's better than saying you have 31 characters only to limit who you can play as. As well, the replayability for Rose and Camellia Collection would be that much more robust by adding a few of the usual fighting game modes. If they actually made it so that all 23 unique characters could be played as, you could have a survival mode where you take on random opponent after random opponent, only healing by 1 Rose each time. Then you could have a time attack mode where you fight the specific enemies of each chapter and see how fast you can make your way through them. If you hit certain times with each chapter, maybe you can unlock a time attack chapter that is all opponents from all chapters in the order they appear in the story. For the purpose of the time attack, you can also omit the story parts. You can even have a survival time attack where each match has a time limit to beat. Finally, having a practice mode might be nice, just to take any character you want into a fight. But practice could also be omitted if you could just make versus single player. But no, you absolutely need a friend, otherwise you'll be stuck on the character select. Now, you can use 2 Joy-Cons, one in each hand if you want, but where's the fun in that? And the thing is, these extra modes wouldn't really be needed if they actually tracked the score or time for each chapter. Like, you have a score in the top right of the screen that has absolutely no point because it's not tracked. You want to go for a high score? Well, I hope you're willing to write it down every single time. Your time for each chapter isn't even tracked. When you're selecting a chapter from the main menu that you've already played through, you can select which opponent you want to start from. So I can understand maybe not tracking the time if the player selects which fight they want to take part in, but if you start from the beginning and play all the way through, you should be able to track your score and time to finish. Without any of this, I don't really see any reason for me to come back to this game. In the end, Rose and Camellia Collection was a nice little distraction from my usual Muso content. I may have had a few things to complain about, but I still appreciate Wayforward for giving me this experience. Do I think Rose and Camellia Collection is going to end up on my list of top games for 2024? No. I don't foresee Rose and Camellia being anything except a flash in the pan for me. The gameplay and story kept me glued to the game as I played through each of the 5 chapters, but once I finished the game, I had no reason to come back to it with the exception of this review. So with all that's been said, I give Rose and Camellia Collection a 6 out of 10. Sure, it may not be a long-lasting game, but I still think it's a worthwhile experience if you're looking for a Punch-Out style game. I personally never played Punch-Out until I recorded some gameplay of Super Punch-Out for this video, but if it's anything similar to Rose and Camellia Collection, just not turn-based, then I may need to give it a try as well. But back to the game I'm reviewing right now. Like I said multiple times, the gameplay is the main draw here. And even though Versus has its flaws, it's still a fun game when friends are over. I would probably say if you see this game on sale, pick it up. But if you're looking at the $20 regular price, maybe consider whether you'll enjoy a 2-hour game like this. I mean, if you think about it, that's $10 an hour, which is lower than minimum wage in most Canadian provinces. Wait, does that mean I legally have to pay them more for this game? Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Rose and Camellia Collection. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more. What other games would you like to see me cover? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to help support this channel and what I do here, you can join the Guild, just like these awesome people that you're seeing on screen right now. You can join them at the end of every single video for just $1 a month over on Patreon, or you can donate in a one-time fashion and join the volunteer unit over on Coffee. A special shout out to my Guild Generals Beggy Beg Beg and Loose for supporting this channel at the top tier. There are other rewards and other tiers as well, so check out the links that you see on screen, and I will see you all down in the comments.